Kenzie, you have the call.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to go back to letting the committee know when Mr Harfield was appearing, because we have done a bit of homework and it seems the committee was asking the department questions about Mr Harfield's attendance at 10:08 a.m. and at 10:46 a.m. the committee was advised that Mr Harfield, who wasn't attending, would now actually be attending. Mr Curran, are you standing by your evidence that that's coincidence?
Senator, I'm just not aware of that. Yes is the short answer, Senator, absolutely.
What about the gentleman behind you? Would they like to come to the table, please?
Senator, I just ask that you maybe ask the witnesses before us, and if they need other witnesses to come to the table, I'm sure they will, but please direct your questions to the witnesses at the table.
Ms Messer, were you watching estimates yesterday, or anyone that you oversee?
Thank you, Senator. Danielle Messer, Chief Culture and Diversity Officer. No, I was not aware.
Who in your organisation was watching Senate estimates yesterday? You got to see it late at night, Mr Curran?
Yes, Senator, that's correct.
Who in Airservices Australia was monitoring estimates?
I don't think it was the officers that are here. Some of them may have seen parts of it. I'll let them speak for themselves. I wasn't sitting with everyone all day yesterday.
No, but I'm assuming you'd know who was monitoring estimates. So that you'd know what questions you were going to be asked.
I know one person that was monitoring estimates, and that person is not here.
Is not here?
Yeah.
Is the person that person reports to here?
No, but that person reports to is here, and that's Mr Stoddart.
Great. Do people removed, Mr Slater?
Just before you do that, have you got a little name plaque?
Unfortunately, I don't. I wasn't put down as an official witness.
They'll make you one, so just stand by, because I do ask that we have a name clear so we can identify who the individual is.
Well, they can also state their name, and we're all intelligent enough to remember it.
Organise one for the gentleman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator. Paul Stoddart, Government Relations at Airservices. I was not watching the estimates procedure at the time. I had followed up later on in the day. We had a whole range of meetings during the day that we were all participating in. There were members from my team that were keeping an eye on estimates throughout the day to identify and understand the themes that were coming up, as is the case, I'm sure, for most departments and agencies. But I am aware that none of the folks at this table were watching estimates at that time.
So Mr Curran, when did Mr Harfield advise you he was able to attend estimates?
It would have been Thursday or Friday last.
Well, was it Thursday
week.
Or was it Friday?
I think perhaps Friday, Senator.
Friday? Morning or afternoon?
It would have been in the morning.
And via email?
No, a face-to-face conversation.
Face-to-face conversation. And what did you do with that information?
I had a conversation with the Government Relations team,
Mr Stoddart?
including Mr Stoddart, and we also, I think it was probably fair to say, Mr Harfield had firmed up that he was going to come on Friday, and we had a conversation around notifying the Secretariat.
So, Mr Stoddart, you found out on the Thursday or the Friday that Mr Harfield was able to attend?
I think it was the Friday, and in Canberra, I think, as has been mentioned, Monday was a public holiday, and we asked the team that is within the Government Relations team to send the advice to the Secretariat that Mr Harfield would be attending.
And when were they advised to send that email to the Secretariat?
It would have been in the morning.
Friday morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were told Friday morning. So Mr Harfield let Mr Curran know Friday morning. Mr Curran let Mr Stoddart and his team know Friday morning. Why didn't your team email the Secretariat on Friday?
We hadn't firmed up on that advice yet. We were still discussing.
Sorry? What? Mr Harfield said he's going.
Mr Harfield said he was going.
Mr Curran has told you let the Secretariat know.
Yep.
Why didn't you let the Secretariat know Friday?
I didn't think about it at that stage. We were still finalising briefings for estimates. It must have been an oversight. The team were advised to provide the advice to the Secretariat at their earliest convenience on Tuesday, which they did.
So this is like symptomatic of the issues within Airservices Australia, this just little slice of behaviour. This committee has been expecting the CEO to turn up. We get advice from Mr Curran, who thinks he's the interim CEO on the 15th of May, advises the committee. Mr Harfield tells Mr Curran he will come along as the CEO, and you don't think it's important enough for this committee to know that?
No.
In a timely manner. I'm sorry, Mr Stoddart. As busy as the GovRels people are at Airservices Australia, I find it incredible that the email
Senator, can I please respond?
couldn't be sent. Well, I haven't finished.
Okay, all right, just calm down.
I find it incredible that the GovRels team
Senator McKenzie,
at Airservices... Let me finish, please,
sorry,
Chair.
as the Chair, I'm just trying to maintain some order here. So with that, I don't want witnesses and senators talking over each other. Senator McKenzie, you have the call, and then I'll come back to the witness.
Thank you,
I
Chair.
find it incredible
Yeah.
that the GovRels team of Airservices Australia doesn't treat this committee with the respect that it deserves. That you couldn't. You've given your team a direction Friday morning, but then you said you were waiting for something to firm up. What were you waiting to firm up?
So let me clarify. Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Chair. The way that these events unfolded on Friday weren't as seamless as you have suggested, Senator. The decisions that were made were relayed over a course of time. By the time I was advised, and you can imagine there were meetings and a whole range of work going on at the time on Friday, this may have been around about the afternoon, and the advice to the team was later on that day. That advice then was relayed on Tuesday morning at our earliest opportunity, after we had been preparing for our appearance today. It did not all happen in the space of a few minutes, as you have suggested.
Oh, I didn't suggest a few minutes. I'm going on the evidence before the committee. Mr Harfield said morning. Mr Curran said morning. He said he told you in the morning, and you told me that you let your team know in the morning. Hence, I think it's in the morning, which for me and most Australians means before midday.
Okay.
Not minutes. I've never said minutes. Don't verbal me.
Just relax. Let's just get through this.
I'm very relaxed.
All right, but let's also not try and raise the temperature here. Was there a question at all, Senator McKenzie? Because I want to get back to asking witnesses questions. So have you got a question for any of the witnesses before us?
Yeah.
All right.
Heaps.
Well, please fire away.
Now, Mr Harfield, earlier when we were talking about the TIBA events and going through the risks that the pilots outlined in their submission, you said that ASA and CASA had done risk assessments. Yes. Could you run me through those risk assessments, please?
What I might do is ask Craig Charker or Mr Charker to
Great, thank you.
Hello everyone, Craig Charker, Acting Chief Service Delivery Officer. I'll sort of step this through, if I may, around, because there's been a number of events that we've had. We have a procedure published for the en route areas, so those areas that would generally be the areas that adopt a TIBA and temporary restricted area procedure if they're unable to provide staffing for that area. So that's published as a standard, if you like, for the organisation, and we see in some of the materials that were tabled around what is being referred to here, the operations of TIBA in Australian airspace, examples of those notice to airmen in this context. That's what it's called, a NOTAM. So that document sets the framework for what we do. Then on a given period for when we know, and we don't want...
Sorry, Mr Chaka, I was asking specifically about the risk assessments.
Yep. So within that process, there's a risk assessment that goes with that procedure. So as we establish
each individual, just with the procedure overall, or
with the
each
procedure overall,
activation of a
and
TIBA?
within the activation as well. So
Are they public, those risk assessments?
No, Senator.
Yeah. Could you table those, please?
Yes, I think so. But not,
Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. That was my question. Were there risks? So there's a risk assessment done with the procedure broadly, and then for each individual TIBA event. Yes.
Yes?
Sorry, Hansard doesn't pick up. Nodding.
Sorry, yes.
So that's a yes, and I would like both the procedural risk assessment tabled and what's an adequate.
Do we give you a sample of the number of things?
Thank you. Appreciate it. I just want to go back to the question that, gentlemen, we didn't get answered previously, is how in your on-time performance and other key metrics, how do you record internally and therefore report publicly the cause of a TIBA event if the airline has cancelled the operation? How do you record it? I don't want to go through the process.
Yeah, so we
I just
will
want to know what's on your spreadsheet.
So the way that we would record it is if we were attributable to it. We don't specify if there's a cancellation that we're not directly attributable to. We have some parameters around defining that, and then daily we publish those numbers on our website.
So you say ASA was responsible?
Yeah, so we would say, for example, there were, let's just say 50 cancellations today, and we were attributable to, say, 5 of those. We would be publishing on our website each day, sitting there saying there are 5 that were attributable, say, into Sydney as a result of our attribution, and then we just say that there were another 45, but we don't put any attribution to it or to what airlines that may be.
So the 207 events,
Correct.
you have, whether you're, if Qantas or Virgin has cancelled their operation as a result of you activating a TIBA, is that your fault? Like, do you say it's attributed to us activating?
If they've cancelled it due to a staffing situation or
Yes.
outage, we would attribute it to us.
Okay. Thank you.
We also capture the delay as well and attribute the delay to us where that's appropriate.
Sorry, say that again.
We also attribute the delay to us. So there's cancellation and delay, and so we try to be as transparent around both of those pieces.
And when was
as
that
possible.
changed?
That was introduced around April last year.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. On notice, could you provide me how many ground delay programs have occurred at each of the 4 major regulated airports in each calendar year for the last 5 years?
Yes, we can, Senator.
Thank you. How many aircraft movements were impacted as a result of each of those events?
We should be able to, definitely over the last couple of years, but going back.
Thank you. What was the movement cap for each event, and what was the planned capacity prior to the cause?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you. Would you also have the data on the reasons behind each instance?
We should have, Senator.
Yeah, okay, if you could also provide that, that would be fantastic. Now, just going to some questions from yesterday. When were you advised, Mr Harfield, that you were successfully recommended by the board to Minister King for reappointment?
So say that question
You
again.
were recommended to your board. Oh, sorry, your board recommended your reappointment to Minister King?
I was advised sort of last year that that was being contemplated.
That's
yes.
what's going to be happening, and that's my understanding, that the board recommended you to the Minister.
There was a discussion with me whether I would be willing to, and yes. So
Yes, right. And was that discussion only with the board, or did you also have a discussion with the Minister or her office about your willingness to continue in the role?
no, there was a discussion with the board.
The board. Okay. So when were you informed that you would be unsuccessful?
17th of April, Senator.
17th of April. Right. Okay.
I was on leave at the time, Senator.
And that came as a surprise to you?
The expectation was that I was going for a third term, and
Yep.
it was advised that
And who advised you?
the chair.
The chair. Okay. Did you meet with the Minister prior to the 12th of February to discuss your reappointment?
No, Senator.
And when was the last time you met with Minister King?
I had a meeting with Minister King on the 18th of April, but prior to that was about a week and a half before that in regards to Melbourne Airport.
Okay, so sorry, the 18th of April, and you were advised...
The 17th, I had a,
on the 17th,
I had a meeting
and then
with
a week.
with
maybe on the 10th of April, you had a meeting with her on Melbourne Airport.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. Do you know if the minister met with your chair prior to the 12th of February?
I am unaware.
Would you normally be aware? If your chair
not
was...
not necessarily. Well, regarding my appointment, not necessarily.
Okay, no, that's fair. When was the last time your chair met with Minister King, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, would have been last year, I think, sometime.
Did the minister express any concern with your performance as CEO in the 2 years that she's been your minister?
Concerns with the performance of Airservices, yes.
Yes, okay. And was that prior to the 12th of the February estimates?
Yes, it been arranged through a number of times during 2023.
Okay. And did the Secretary of the Department, Mr Betts, has he met or spoken with you prior to the 12th of February to discuss concerns with your proposed reappointment?
No, Senator.
No. And when was the last time you met with Mr Betts?
Friday last week.
After you told Mr Curran you were coming to estimates?
Correct.
Your term was due to expire on the 8th of March, but your appointment was extended to the 8th of June.
Correct.
And given that you weren't advised till the 17th of April, what sort of communication did you have prior to the 8th of March, given your term was expired? What was the minister's sort of proposal?
I'm not able to share what the minister's proposal was. There was more done through the chair, obviously, as the expectation that it was going through the cabinet process, and sometimes there are delays in the cabinet process.
Yes, there are.
I was given an extension of 90 days while I worked through cabinet.
Okay, so you were given the 90 days by the chair prior to the 8th of March.
Yeah, how the coordination of that, whether it was with the Minister's office and the department, I'm unsure
That's
of, but there was a board resolution extending me for 90 days.
Okay, so the board, while we wangle our way through, but you're not aware of whether the chair knew that the minister was, or cabinet wasn't of a mind to reappoint?
No.
Okay. So who advised you of those, the 90 days you were advised by the board?
Correct.
Yep. And when were you advised of that?
I was advised on whatever the Friday was prior. I think that might be the 7th of March or whatever it was.
Oh, wow. Cutting timelines. Tight. And that was the board that... Okay. So prior to the February estimates hearing, did you have any reason to believe you would not be reappointed?
No, Senator.
On the 1st of May, the minister announced a media release announcing your term of CEO would end on the 8th of June. Were you consulted about the media release?
I wasn't consulted about the media release. It was being timed with an announcement that was being made internally that I was finishing up.
Right. Okay. And so there was sort of toing and froing to make sure that that internal notification to staff, I imagine?
Yeah, it was an internal by the chair to staff that obviously I was leaving and we were putting in transition arrangements, and that was coordinated through the department.
And the transition arrangements would be what?
That Mr Curran would be the acting chief executive on my departure, and then we would be working over, call it shadowing over the remaining weeks to ensure an effective handover.
So in that communication to staff, was it clear that Mr Curran would be the acting CEO on your departure?
It was just mentioned, if I remember the release or the comment was that Peter would be appointed acting chief executive.
Mr Stoddart, were you involved in the, I'm assuming you do comms, just external comms?
I don't do comms, Senator.
You don't
No.
do comms at all? You weren't
No.
consulted about the email to staff?
No.
Okay. Ms Messer, were you aware?
No, Senator. My colleague, Mr Curran, is responsible for communications.
Right. Wow. Responsible for communications and got your title wrong. So in the communication that went out to staff, where it was made clear to staff of Airservices Australia that you were going to be the acting CEO, when was that, if I was reading that email, when was that to commence?
Senator, my understanding of it and the understanding that was intended was on the completion of Mr Hartfield's...
If I was reading the communications.
Well, Senator, I had a conversation with the Chair where he asked me would I be prepared to act the day before, and the understanding that I had was that that would be from the completion of Mr Hartfield's tenure on the 8th of June. At that time, I wasn't involved in the development of that communications. Our head of internal communications was obviously involved. I did not see the email until after it went out.
So, if I was reading the email, when would I think you were acting CEO?
I genuinely think from the 8th of June. They made an announcement.
So why, if you genuinely think that, why on the 15th of May did you think you were... Are you the only person that thought you were the interim chief executive officer?
As I said, Senator, I think it would have been better had that been referenced as the incoming.
Yes.
Why
did you make that decision?
Why did I make the decision to send a letter?
No, not to send a letter, to title yourself the interim chief executive officer.
It was in the context of anticipating that for the Senate estimates hearing that we're having today, that I would in fact be temporarily in that role.
This is, again, the culture of Airservices Australia. It's not filling me with confidence that you're starting this way, Mr Curran. Are you going to apply for the role proper?
Senator, I haven't made up my mind regarding that.
Hope the chair's watching. Do you know the reason? Do you know if the minister put forward to cabinet the board's recommendation, Mr Harfield?
I am unaware, Senator.
Did the minister give you any reason for not reappointing you?
No, Senator. We had a private conversation afterwards, but there wasn't the reasons mentioned.
Okay. Now, Airservices Australia is seeking a new CEO. Who's that contract with?
I will ask Ms Mesa to answer that.
Senator, that contract is with Hydrix and Struggles. They've been engaged by the board to undertake the search for the CEO.
And how much will that cost? What's their contract?
I don't have the details of the contract with me. I will take that on notice.
Mr Stoddart, the people that you have in your team who were watching Senate estimates yesterday would have known we asked a series of questions on this. So in the preparation, you would have known you were going to be asked this question because the department said, we can't answer that question. That's a question for Airservices Australia. Is that an answer you'd be able to get to me in the next half an hour, Ms Messer?
I could arrange to get that contract.
That would be wonderful if you could. So when are we planning to have that process wrapped up?
My understanding is that process could take anywhere from 6 to 9 months. I'm not close to the actual process. It's being managed, as I mentioned, by the board. Ordinarily, those types of search programs can take up to 6, 9, 12 months, depending on the talent pool and when the recommended candidate's identified.
Okay. I just now want to, I might return to that topic at a later date, but for now we'll put...
Senator Allman-Payne has some questions.
Yep.
Do you mind if we go to maybe Senator Allman-Payne for about 5 to 8 minutes, and then we'll come back to Senator McKenzie? But yep.
Senator McKenzie might even give me 10 if it takes
All right.
Absolutely.
Twist her arm. I'm sure she'll give you 2 more in 3 minutes.
Just coming back to Brisbane, why are the nightly A380 departures from Brisbane overland unable to stick to the published standard instrument departure track and modelled heights for noise abatement?
That's a question I'd have to take on. Pardon me, that's a question I'd have to take on notice. I'm not aware that the A380 in particular, or which particular airline's operations you're referring to. It is the case that we endeavour wherever weather and traffic permits to operate in a mode that I've referred in this committee before to SOD-prop, simultaneous opposite direction parallel runway operations, which puts arrivals and departures over the bay. Wherever possible, that is the mode that we seek to operate in, sensitive times of day, night time and weekends. So to the extent that A380 operations occur overland, it would be because it was not possible to operate in that mode over the bay. And then as to the specific tracking of a flight on a given day, there's a myriad of considerations. There can be weather factors, there could be a range of factors, and so it'd be difficult for me to give a precise answer other than to take on notice. Perhaps we can provide some data around that particular operation. If you could be more precise on the time that the flight takes, we can then look into that.
All right, so on notice, could you please provide a report of how often aircraft are not flying the published SIDs across Brisbane and not meeting the published model overflight heights for the last 12 months?
Senator, I think we can do that on notice. As I say, there will be instances where that's due to weather and other matters.
Yep, so if you could just provide that on notice, that would be great. It's my understanding that Airservices Australia has stated that Brisbane is the last priority for the introduction of continuous descent operations. Is that correct?
No, Senator, that's not correct. My understanding is that we're endeavouring to introduce continuous descent operations at a higher altitude. I can provide some more explanation on that in a moment, should you wish. In the course of the next 12 to 18 months, some of the factors that go to the timing of that are the package 3 and 4 changes we talked about earlier. We need to design those flight paths, those standard arrival routes, in a way so that a continuous descent arrival or operation is practical. We've been conducting a trial in Melbourne for some time and seeking to learn how we can best manage the flows of traffic. CDO, continuous descent operations, are difficult to implement in busy times at busy airports because the essential premise behind a CDO is that aircraft will not be vectored, moved around. The energy of the aircraft will not be managed by the air traffic controller, it will be managed by the flight management system, and that allows a thrust idle arrival, which has the benefit of reduced CO2 as well as reduced noise for communities. It is difficult to do during busy periods. I'm not aware of any airport in the world that successfully implements this procedure on a permanent basis. Hence, we're trying to understand how we can implement it in Melbourne and then moving to other airports. Brisbane's planned for the next 12 to 18 months.
Which airport has the highest number of noise complaints in the country?
Highest number of noise complaints today is Brisbane. The highest number of complainants would also be Brisbane.
Yes, because my understanding is that the noise complaints for Brisbane are higher than all the other airports put together. So I guess there's some confusion as to why Brisbane isn't the number one priority and why you've chosen to prioritise Melbourne over Brisbane.
Senator, we tend to we obviously look at complaint numbers. We also look at complainants. It is the case that there is a substantial amount of complaints made by a relatively small number of complainants in a couple of cases across the country, which does skew that data, which is why we look at complainants importantly. That's not to suggest Brisbane's not a priority, though.
So you're suggesting that are you saying there are less people complaining in Brisbane more often?
I'm not saying there are less people. I'm saying that I can give you the stats precisely if you wish.
Your comment was, there are some places that have a small number of complainants.
For example, Senator, there's an individual complainant in Perth that complained 20,000 times in the course of 2023. The metric alone of complaints or contacts wouldn't drive us to necessarily implement CDO in Perth as a priority. We need to balance out the considerations.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, if there are some people who are at the end of their tether and complaining a lot, that's factored in.
Senator, it's factored in insofar as we try to take a compassionate approach to our communities where we have individuals that are clearly in distress. If you're making a great number of complaints that are typically significant concerns that the individual holds, we have particular procedures in place where we seek to engage with them, access our employee assistance program to provide support, as well as to understand their complaints in particular. It is the case that a number of those who are complaining the greatest are in positions that they typically live in locations that are runway aligned, and there is relatively little that Airservices can do about amending flight paths that extend from the runway centre line out, because aircraft need to join final or need to depart broadly in the direction on which they take off.
Mm-hmm. This is a follow-up from committee question number 41. In additional estimates 2023-24 regarding the number of air traffic controllers required in Airservices Terminal Control Unit in Brisbane. Airservices' response was that Brisbane operations require 39 air traffic controllers in Airservices Terminal Control Unit to provide full service, and Airservices plans to have 46 controllers allocated to this airspace by July 2024. How many air traffic controllers are available in the Brisbane Terminal Control Unit right now?
Senator, I'll ask my colleague, Mr. Craig Charker, to see if he's able to answer that question. Or
I have to take that one on notice for the exact number for now. So yes.
Okay, I'm somewhat surprised that needs to be taken on notice, given that you were asked that question at the last estimates. I would have thought that was an obvious question that would be asked again. Because I also want to know, where is the recruitment, onboarding and training program up to in Brisbane? Are you able to answer that question?
I don't have the details with me of the exact training program that's being undertaken at the moment, but we can get that to you.
Do you take that on notice, please? So I guess you can't answer whether the aspiration of 46 air traffic controllers, which is a month's time, is likely to be reached for Brisbane?
I don't think we'll achieve 46 in that time frame, but I'll come back on those.
Are you able to expand for me? I mean, you said in answer to my earlier question you're not sure how many there are. You've now just told me that you don't think we're going to achieve 46. So what is that based on? What is your assumption around how many are there now? Is it more than 39?
So my understanding was where, and I don't want to do the exact number, around 43 total air traffic controllers there against that mature requirement of 39. So that's my understanding.
Okay, all right. Well, if you can take the broader questions that I've asked on notice, that would be helpful. The Commonwealth Ombudsman is conducting a multiple complaints investigation into the department's failure to provide regulatory oversight over Airservices Australia. In that, I'm relating to file number 2023-713825. Has the Commonwealth Ombudsman contacted Airservices Australia about their investigation?
Senator, yes, they have. I can just run you through the process that we've had with the Commonwealth Ombudsman. On the 22nd of December 2023, the Commonwealth Ombudsman received a complaint from the Brisbane Flight Path Community Alliance. On the 12th of January 2024, the Ombudsman met with the Department of Infrastructure in relation to that complaint, and then subsequently with us on the 23rd of January this year. We had an initial discussion with them regarding that complaint. Very very recently, on the 21st of May, the Commonwealth Ombudsman has written to us, advised that they were opening a Section 8 investigation as a result of the complaint from the Brisbane Flight Path Community Alliance, and we've been asked to respond by the 10th of June.
Okay, so have you responded yet?
Not yet, Senator, no.
Okay, so that's in process. All right, thank you. I think I'll leave it there, Chair.
Excellent. Right
Thank
on
you.
10 minutes. Thank you very much. Now, Senator McKenzie, am I coming back to you?
Oh, so many questions.
Or Senator Canavan? Or Senator Rennick? No?
No, I did want to ask about another question on notice
Do you want to come to
that remains unanswered from my end, where I asked you that I understood that you provide CASA with weekly reports.
That's correct, or notifications, yes?
Yep. On monitored airspace interruption.
Yes.
Yes. I asked you to table those reports to the committee,
Yes.
which Mr Harfield responded, yes, we can. We can provide them, but you haven't provided them. Mr Stoddart, is it your group of your team that is in charge of complying with Senate orders or questions on notice and making sure that Airservices Australia complies with its obligations as a government entity?
Yes, Senator, my team is the one that coordinates input from across the business to respond to questions.
So is this just a simple oversight?
Can you provide me with a number of it?
I can provide clarity to that. Is that when I actually answered, we were providing weekly, well, I was shooting weekly reports. What we do is we provide each event reports when it happens. So there was a consolidation of a number of those reports that were provided with the question on notice. So we do the monthlies they set there. There wasn't an actual weekly consolidated report. It was that was my mistake in the sense that we provided. I was under the assumption that we provided on a weekly basis. We actually provided on an event-by-event basis, and they were provided. So
it's portfolio question number 33, SQ24000033. So if I could get that answered by the end of business today?
Absolutely, Senator.
That's an absolutely, Mr Stoddart.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Right. I just want to understand, my understanding is that ASA has requested a 19% increase in service fees from airlines over the next 2.5 years.
Yep. I'll ask Mr
Here we go.
Logan to the table.
Thank you.
Senator Paul Logan, Chief Finance and Performance Officer.
Yep.
Sorry, Senator. What was the question?
You're wanting a 19% increase in service fees from airlines.
Yes, Senator. We've drafted a price notification and we're going through a process with the ACCC to have that assessed.
And what's been the feedback thus far?
The feedback has been in part around service performance and
no kidding.
ensuring that we are providing the right level of service performance.
And so just give me some detail to that. Some of your clients, shall we say, are concerned about your service performance. What's their feedback specifically?
I don't... The feedback was pointing to other feedback that they had been giving us, suggesting that we needed to lift service performance before.
Wanting them to pay nearly 20% extra.
An increase in prices, yes, Senator.
Do you agree with that?
Senator, as Mr Harfield said, we've been improving our service performance over the last 12 months. We're taking that into consideration as we take on all the feedback from the industry. Other component parts coming from feedback has also been around forecast traffic volumes and as well as the time frame over which the pricing should occur. We're taking into consideration all that feedback and we are considering how to assess future price increases.
So Qantas has said, noting your 19% price rise increase is premised on a number of important assumptions. Set pricing for an unusually short pricing period of 2.25 years from April 24 to June 26, included the 9 months from July 23 to March 24 within its building block calculations, despite that period being prior to the period you're seeking the price rise. You applied a demand forecast that appears to be out of date and conservative, and you applied a high WACC to calculate returns, primarily as a result of your economic expert, and I'm interested to know who that is at this table, who the economic expert is, incorrectly applying filters to determine an appropriate asset beta. Now, that's Qantas's
Yes, Senator.
assertions about the assumptions underpinning your 19% service increase. Can you please address each of those assumptions and whether you agree with they are your assumption and why you've included those assumptions in your price increase request?
Thanks, Senator. Let me see if I can address all of them.
Thank you. I'm happy to remind you as we go through.
Thank you. So in terms of the time period, we had been talking to the ACCC about what an appropriate time period was. In that case, we do have a significant investment, series of investments that are due to come online in the next 2 to 3 years. And as a consequence, we were looking at that time period to understand what an appropriate time period was. In the conversations that we'd had, we thought that that was pitching towards the right sort of time period. I mean, again, we'll take some feedback on from the ACCC as to whether that is the right kind of time period. In terms of the time frame and the assertion in terms of financial year 24 that will come to an end, what we have been managing is we have not increased prices since 2016. We provided a slight price decrease in 2019. So we are operating, in effect, at 2012 price levels. In the meantime, we did see our revenues drop by about 80% during COVID. We've seen the recovery through till now start to head towards about just over 90% of pre-COVID revenue levels. So compared to previous plans, we're still significantly below the level of traffic and revenues associated with it. When we put the proposal together and started consultation in 2023, we were adopting forecasts that were our best understanding of the market at that point in time. As we saw through 2023, the recovery was uneven and there's a level of volatility. We have taken on that feedback. We have got revised forecasts. They're slightly higher, not significantly higher, so a few percentage points higher, which we'd take into consideration in a final notification.
So, sorry, just to address that.
Yeah.
So your demand forecast that they're claiming is out of date and conservative you've addressed. So what are you forecasting in terms of demand over this period to 26?
Off
June
the top
26.
of my head, it's...
We've got a folder there. It might be in there.
It is... So the demand forecast was... Sorry, Senator.
That's okay. You're obliged, in fact required, to give full and accurate information to our questions, so I'm happy to wait.
Thank you.
If he doesn't know it, he can also take it on notice as well. That's within his rights. Do you need a lolly? Do you need
No, not the throat, it's the nose.
All right.
I don't have the specific numbers. I'm looking at graphs that I brought in. Based on the graph, we were anticipating, and again I'd clarify a notice, but I think it's about a 20% increase in traffic over the time period through to 2030, so we were looking over quite a long time period. What we have seen in comparison to that is that the 2023-24 financial year, the outcome or the likely outcome forecast for this year is about 3 to 4% higher than what was anticipated. And that 3 to 4%, along with a small increase above that, we'd be looking to take off those activity forecasts in an adjusted price notification. The specifics I'd need to clarify on notice, Senator, but to give you the orders of magnitude, hopefully that gives you a sense
if you
of
could
that.
on notice. And what about, they've been quite derogatory to the economic expert incorrectly applying filters. Can you explain that?
Senator, we used an expert from, I think the firm's name is Incenta, INCENTA, top of my head, who are experts in this field of weighted average cost of capital. The weighted average cost of capital field is a highly debated field.
Qantas would be across that too. They've got a lot of...
Our understanding is that they are often in dispute with airports on these issues. We've adopted an expert. The challenge is with experts, there are not many of them in the country, and some of the experts align with airlines and some align with airports. Ours has done work with airports, and so one of the reasons why we work through an ACCC process is to also get an independent view of that. So we've used a level of expertise that we think is appropriate. Qantas has disputed a range of airport weighted average cost of capital, so expertise in this space is highly technical, and we take that expertise on board as what we think is a relevant expert.
Do you think the expertise exists within the ACCC? I know we had to fight a long time to get an agricultural expert embedded within the ACCC for a whole raft of reasons. It just seems these aviation competition issues is the expertise, in your opinion, within the ACCC currently around competition in the aviation sector?
Senator, I can only go from my experience.
Yeah.
That's a very broad question. They seem to do the right due diligence on the work, so I certainly can't complain about the way they operate.
That's good to know. I just want to go to some other concerns with the service price increase. That there are issues around airfield rescue and firefighting services that have been raised, about your capability and uplift program. There seems to be uncertainty in the cost and delivery of that in the short to medium term. Has that been an issue that's raised with anybody at the table?
Not directly.
Airports?
No, not directly, Senator.
No? Okay. How will the price increase impact regional airports?
In our draft notification, Senator, if I chose one of the regional locations as an indication, the terminal navigation price at a location like Albury would rise from $15.22 per tonne landed to a January 2026 figure of $19.86 per tonne landed. The rescue and firefighting service, Albury doesn't have, so those same numbers would apply, Senator, if I picked...
What about somewhere like Launceston or Mackay?
Launceston, okay, so Launceston, Mackay, the price would rise from $11.95 currently to January 26 price of $15.59 per tonne landed. And in the case of Mackay, the aviation rescue firefighting price for Category 6 aircraft would rise from $2.32 a tonne landed to $2.90 per tonne landed.
What about Category 7 aircraft?
Category 7 at Mackay, we don't currently have a separate Category 7 charge. Part of the note.
Is that because Category 7 doesn't fly into Mackay currently?
It would be when we last set prices, as I said, Senator, back in 2016-ish, there was not Category 7 aircraft. There are now.
So my understanding is interregional airports such as Hamilton Island, Launceston and Mackay, those airports and customers flying in will face a 550% increase, where it'll go from $2.32 per person to $13.64 per person.
For large aircraft, that's true, Senator.
That's for Category 7?
For Category 7,
yep.
Which is, as an example, a Boeing 737-800 aircraft. For regional aircraft like turboprops, the price would increase from $2.32 a tonne landed to $2.90 because they would be Category 6 aircraft.
Well, it's not always turboprops that are flying into these airports, is it? The Sunshine Coast, my understanding, will increase 304%. Is that your...
Senator, that looks to be in the orders, correct?
Yep.
Again,
what about Canberra Airport?
Canberra Airport...
the percentage increase?
Would reduce in price for Category 7 due to when the price was last set, as I said, in about 2016.
And what about Category 8?
There has been a substantial increase in the Canberra flights in terms of Category 7 aircraft, and we adjust the price according to the number of Category 7 aircraft.
So I'd like to understand the impact for Category 8, and then I'd like to know what would be the increases for Category 8.
So for Category 8, it would be an increase to $27.20 $27.20 per tonne landed.
From what?
From about $2.32 at the moment.
Okay.
Again, that's a base level service charge for Category 6.
So from $2 to $27.
Sorry, let me recut it. That's not correct. It would be from $9.08 to $27.20. Right,
for Category 8 aircraft?
For Category 8.
And my understanding is that Adelaide Airport for Category 9 and 10 has a 168% increase. So these are quite significant increases that the airlines, if you listen to them and their thin margins, aren't going to absorb. These are going to be passed on to consumers, aren't they?
That's, Senator, we base our pricing on cost recovery principles in this space. So what we take into account in deriving these prices is the additional cost of what was required for Category 8 compared to Category 7 or Category 7 compared to Category 6. And then we seek to recover that additional cost based on the number of those types of aircraft that are arriving. So in some cases there is significant additional cost that we're taking on.
That will be passed on to
as
consumers.
a cost of those for the aircraft coming into those locations, and we adopt essentially something like a cost recovery process on that.
So that's your process. What typically has been the decision of airlines when prices have gone up? Do they absorb those costs?
Senator, that's a matter for the airlines. It's hard to determine
But
that
you've
based
watched
on
this over
airfares.
time.
I think you're asking for an opinion.
No, I'm asking his expert financial opinion.
Exactly, opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, we've only got about a minute and a half to go, so maybe one last question
Before break?
before break. Otherwise, we'll break early.
Well, that's your decision as chair. So, there is concern that this price increase will disproportionately impact regional airports, as I've outlined: Canberra, Launceston, Mackay, the Sunny Coast, Hamilton Island, and the like. What changes would you suggest making to this arrangement that would mitigate those concerns for regional airports?
Senator, as I said, the basis of the pricing, our challenge is how we absorb those costs. We try and absorb those costs in the case of aviation rescue and firefighting by having a base level network charge that was put in place in response to some of these issues at a point in time a number of years ago. And that base level service charge was seeking to spread some of those costs. When it does come to the larger aircraft, the Category 7 and Category 8 aircraft, we are juggling the need to employ more staff, deploy more vehicles in the case of rescue and firefighting, to be able to support those aircraft flying into those locations. So what we are attempting to do is to seek to recover those costs over time.
But your prices are going up in certain regional airports in excess of 500% to those travellers. What's happening at Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane Airport? Are they going up 500%?
No, Senator.
What would be their increase?
I think that the challenge that we've got in this space,
No, I'm
Senator,
asking you what is happening at Melbourne,
what's
Brisbane
happening
and
in
Sydney.
Melbourne. So in Melbourne, for Category 8 operations, it would be rising from $3.01 to $3.76.
Wow.
All right, on that note, we're going to break for morning tea and go get ourselves a $5 coffee downstairs. Thank you very much. We'll see you in 15 minutes.